This German home battery lets entire neighborhoods share free electricity without the grid. It doesn't depend on your utility company, and its lithium iron phosphate cells last 10,000 charge cycles, more than double what a Tesla Powerwall is rated for. Yet, despite powering over 125,000 homes across 6 countries, most Americans have never heard of it. It's called the Sonnen battery. By the end, you'll know what it is, how it works, and how to use it, and what it saves you. Let's dive in. Right now, the average American household pays $163 a month for electricity. That's up 26% in just 5 years. And if you're in a state like Hawaii or Connecticut, you're paying closer to $200. So let's look at what that bill is actually buying you, and why it keeps climbing even when you're told the grid is getting cleaner. Your power company generates electricity at massive centralized plants, pushes it through hundreds of miles of transmission lines, steps it down through substations, and delivers it to your meter. Every step in that chain costs money, and every step loses energy. By the time electricity reaches your home, roughly 5 to 7% of it has already vanished as heat in the wires. You're paying for power that never arrived. Now, maybe you've thought about solar panels, maybe you've already installed them, and during a sunny afternoon, your panels might produce more electricity than your house can use. In a perfect world, that surplus would be stored or shared, but in most states, it gets pushed back into the grid at a fraction of what you pay to pull it out. That's called net metering, and utilities across the country have been gutting it. California's NEM 3.0 policy, enacted in 2023, slashed the value of exported solar power by roughly 75%. Nevada, Arizona, and Indiana have all passed similar reductions. Your solar panels still work, but the financial return has been cut at the knees. And when you see what an entire neighborhood of connected batteries can do to your monthly bill, the picture changes. You'll understand why your power company isn't lining up to tell you about this. Here's a number that puts the whole problem in focus. The average American household will spend nearly $2,000 on electricity this year alone. Over the last decade, residential rates have climbed more than 30% nationally, and the Energy Information Administration projects further increases through at least 2030, driven by grid modernization costs and surging demand from data centers and electric vehicles. Your bill is not going down. The conventional answer to this problem is a standalone battery. Buy a Tesla Powerwall, bolt it to your garage wall, and store your daytime solar for nighttime use. That's a fine idea, and it works, but a single battery in a single home is still an island. When your battery is full and your panels are still producing, that extra energy has nowhere useful to go. Your neighbor across the street might be running his air conditioner at full blast, while your surplus vanishes into a grid that pays you pennies. And there's a village in Bavaria, Germany, that figured out the solution to this problem almost 30 years ago. What they built there changes how you think about who should own the power grid. The Sonnen battery works differently from most home batteries on the market, and the difference starts at the chemistry level. Most residential batteries, including the Tesla Powerwall, use nickel-manganese-cobalt cells. Those cells pack energy into a small space, which is great for electric cars where weight matters. But in a home battery that sits on your wall and cycles every single day, longevity matters more than density. Sonnen uses lithium iron phosphate, which the industry abbreviates as LFP. Lithium iron phosphate doesn't contain cobalt, which means 2 things. First, it doesn't overheat the way cobalt-based chemistries can. The thermal runaway risk is dramatically lower. Second, it lasts far longer under daily cycling. Sonnen guarantees 10,000 full charge and discharge cycles. At 1 cycle per day, that's over 27 years of rated life. The Powerwall's NMC chemistry is typically warranted for a fraction of that. Now, if you're thinking a battery is a battery and the chemistry doesn't really matter, think again. Engineers at Sandia National Laboratories have been testing lithium iron phosphate cells since the early 2000s. Their data consistently shows that LFP retains above 80% capacity after 6,000 cycles in controlled conditions. That's not a manufacturer's claim. That's independent federal lab testing. Yet, despite this data being publicly available for over a decade, most solar installers in the US still default to cobalt-based batteries. The industry wasn't built around what lasts longest. It was built around what sells fastest. But the battery chemistry is only half the story. The real innovation is what happens when you connect thousands of these batteries together using software. Sonnen's system includes an intelligent energy management platform built into every unit. It monitors your household consumption in real time, tracks your solar production, learns your usage patterns, and decides when to charge, when to discharge, and when to share. That word, share, is the part that changes everything. In a traditional setup, your battery talks to your inverter, and your inverter talks to the grid. That's it. The Sonnen battery talks to every other Sonnen battery in your area through a cloud-based platform called the Sonnen Community. When your battery is full and your panels are still producing, the system automatically routes that surplus to a neighbor whose battery has capacity. When your battery runs low in the evening, the system pulls stored energy from a neighbor whose house has been empty all day. No phone calls, no negotiations, no meter spinning backward. The software handles it in real time, balancing supply and demand across the entire network. And here's the part that makes it a virtual power plant. When you aggregate hundreds or thousands of these batteries into a single software-managed network, they start behaving like a traditional power plant. The utility can call on that networked capacity during peak demand instead of firing up a natural gas peaker plant. The batteries discharge collectively, stabilize the grid, and the homeowners get paid for providing that service. That's energy flowing from your wall to the grid operator's dispatch desk, earning you money while you sleep. Sonnen calls this the Sonnen VPP, and it's been running commercially since 2018. This isn't a whiteboard concept. It's not a pilot program. It's a working grid asset deployed across 3 continents. The reason you've never heard of this isn't because it's new. It's because it was built in a place where the energy system works completely differently from ours. Sonnen was founded in 2010 by Christoph Ostermann and Torsten Stiefenhofer. They didn't start the company in Berlin or Munich. They started it in a tiny village called Wildpolsried in the Aargau region of Bavaria. Population 2,600. And this village is not normal. In 1999, the village council under Mayor Arno Zengerle decided to invest entirely in renewable energy. No debt, just local projects, locally owned. By 2011, Wildpolsried was producing 321% more electricity than it consumed. The village was earning €4 million a year, selling the surplus back to the national grid. By 2014, that ratio hit 500%. A village of 2,600 people generating 5 times its own electricity and profiting from the excess. That's the soil Sonnen grew out of. The founders looked at this village and asked a question nobody in the American energy industry was asking. What if every home with a battery could be connected to every other home with a battery? What if that network could replace the power plant? In 2016, they launched the Sonnen Community in Germany. By 2017, 8,000 homes were connected and sharing power on a balance sheet basis across the entire country. MIT included Sonnen in its top 50 smartest companies list in 2016, alongside Amazon and Facebook. In 2018, Shell Ventures led a €60 million investment round, and in February 2019, Shell acquired Sonnen outright. That brought total investment in the company past $180 million. But here's what nobody talks about. Sonnen's virtual power plant model worked so smoothly in Germany because Germany has a single interconnected grid operator. Sonnen could bypass regional utilities entirely and work directly with the grid. That structural advantage doesn't exist in the United States, and that gap explains everything about why you don't already have one of these on your wall. Before we get to those barriers, let's look at what happens when someone actually builds a Sonnen community in America. In 2019, a real estate developer called the Wasatch Group opened Soleil Lofts in Harriman, Utah, just south of Salt Lake City. It's a 600-unit apartment complex. Every single apartment has a Sonnen EcoLinks battery mounted inside the living space. The rooftops are covered in over 12,000 solar panels, producing 5.3 megawatts. The combined battery storage totals 12.6 megawatt hours. Together, those batteries and panels supply between 80 and 85% of the building's total energy needs. And the local utility, Rocky Mountain Power, dispatches those batteries daily as a grid asset. They can call on the collective capacity during peak demand, reducing the need to fire up fossil fuel peaker plants. The project cost $34.3 million to build, and Blake Ricetta, the CEO of Sonnen's U.S. operations, called it the most transformative project the company had worked on in the United States. If you want to power, heat, and cool your home off-grid, the Passive House files show you how. Full plans, exact materials, and the honest numbers nobody else gives you. It's not too late to start lowering your bill. Scan the QR code and see for yourself. In Arizona, the story got even bigger. Mandalay Homes is a Department of Energy certified Zero Energy Ready builder. They partnered with Sonnen to equip every home in a 2,900-unit community called Jasper in Prescott Valley. Every home gets rooftop solar and a Sonnen battery. When complete, the community will function as a virtual power plant with 23 megawatt hours of storage capacity and 11.6 megawatts of output. That's comparable to a small commercial power plant, built entirely from residential batteries in people's living rooms. And Mandalay's CEO, Dave Everson, stated publicly that one goal of the project was to help decommission a coal peaker plant. That plant provides evening power to northern Arizona, a neighborhood of homes replacing a coal plant. That's not a slogan, that's the engineering math. Meanwhile, in Australia, Sonnen launched a program called Sonnen Flat. Homeowners with solar panels and a Sonnen battery pay a flat monthly fee starting at $30 and receive a $0 electricity bill in return. Sonnen pays the residual grid charges. In exchange, Sonnen gains access to the battery network for grid stabilization services and earns revenue from the energy market. The first Australian customer, Stephen Fennick, had his annual electricity costs drop from over $3,000 to $480. His system cost $19,000 to install. At that rate, payback lands in under 6 years, and the battery is designed to last 20. In Germany, the Sonnen Flat model has already connected over 60,000 customers. Those customers pay a flat monthly fee, and Sonnen handles everything else. The battery charges from solar during the day and powers the home at night. When Sonnen needs grid stabilization capacity, it draws a small amount from the network and pays the grid operator for the service. The revenue from those grid services is what funds the $0 bills. It's not charity. It's a business model that treats your battery as a revenue-generating asset instead of a passive box on your wall. So, if this technology works in Germany, Utah, Arizona, and Australia, why can't you sign up for a Sonnen community in your neighborhood right now? The answer is structural, and it's the same answer you'll find behind almost every promising distributed energy technology in this country. In Germany, Sonnen works directly with the national grid operator. The company acts as an energy retailer. It can buy and sell electricity, manage customer accounts, and aggregate battery capacity into a tradable grid resource. Germany's Renewable Energy Source Act of 2000 created a feed-in tariff system that gave small producers guaranteed prices and priority access to the grid. The entire market was designed to let distributed energy participate. The United States doesn't work that way. Here, electricity is controlled by roughly 3,000 utilities, each operating under different state regulations. Most are monopolies. In many states, it's literally illegal for anyone other than the licensed utility to sell electricity to a retail customer. Sonnen can't just bypass your local utility and sell you power from your neighbor's battery. The regulatory framework doesn't allow it. It took a federal order to even begin cracking that door open. In September 2020, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission issued Order 2222. That order requires regional grid operators to allow small distributed resources, like home batteries, to aggregate and participate in wholesale energy markets. Before that order, the minimum size requirements and technology-specific rules in most wholesale markets excluded residential batteries entirely. Your 10 kilowatt-hour battery couldn't compete because the rules were written for 500 megawatt gas plants. But even with FERC Order 2222 on the books, implementation has been painfully slow. Regional grid operators have been filing and refiling compliance plans for years. State utility commissions have been dragging their feet on interconnection reforms, and utilities themselves have little financial incentive to welcome virtual power plants, because every kilowatt-hour your neighborhood generates for itself is a kilowatt-hour the utility doesn't sell. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like utilities are deliberately blocking progress, it's more accurate to say the system was never designed for this. The rules were written for a world where power flows one direction, from a central plant to your meter. Everything about the rate structure, the interconnection standards, the metering requirements, and the market rules assumes that model. Distributed batteries that share power across property lines break every assumption in the playbook. And rewriting that playbook requires political will that doesn't generate campaign donations from utility lobbyists. The American Clean Energy Association reported that utilities spent over $70 million on lobbying in 2023 alone. Not against clean energy specifically, but in defense of the rate structures and market rules that keep them at the center of every transaction. So, what can you actually do right now? More than you might think. The Sonnen battery is available in the United States today. The current residential model is the Sonnen Batterie 10, which comes in configurations from 5.5 kilowatt-hours up to 27.5 kilowatt-hours. A 10 kilowatt-hour system runs between $12,000 and $16,000 before incentives. That's the installed price, including inverter, energy management software, and the battery modules. It's not cheap. But here's where the math gets interesting. The Federal Residential Clean Energy Credit falls under Section 45L of the tax code. It offers a 30% tax credit on the full installed cost of a qualified battery system. That credit is available through 2032. On a $14,000 system, that's a $4,200 credit applied directly to your federal income tax. Your net cost drops to under $10,000. If you're in California, Sonnen's Sonnen Connect program lets you enroll your battery in their virtual power plant. The program optimizes your battery to avoid peak rate electricity, provides backup power during outages, and pays you for grid stabilization services. Sonnen's website states that combined savings and rewards can total up to $2,100 per year. At that rate, a $10,000 net system pays for itself in under 5 years. And the battery is warranted for 10 years and 10,000 cycles, with a design life that could stretch past 20. If you're shopping, compare the Sonnen battery against the Tesla Powerwall 3 and the Enphase IQ battery. All three use different chemistries and different software platforms. The Sonnen battery's advantage is its VPP integration and LFP longevity. The Powerwall's advantage is its higher round-trip efficiency, around 96% versus Sonnen's 86%. The Enphase system is modular and plays well with Enphase microinverters. Don't let a salesperson pick for you. Ask 3 questions. First, what is the round-trip efficiency? Second, how many full cycles is the battery warranted for? Third, does this battery qualify for a virtual power plant program in my utility territory? That third question is the one most installers won't bring up, because it requires them to understand grid policy, not just wiring diagrams. One warning: Sonnen's US installer network is smaller than Tesla's. In Solar Review's 2025 industry survey, none of the surveyed installers carried Sonnen batteries. That doesn't mean they're unavailable. It means you may need to request a Sonnen-certified installer through the company's website directly, rather than going through a general solar installer. The company has a manufacturing center in Atlanta, Georgia, so parts and support are domestic. And if you're considering pairing a Sonnen battery with a new solar installation, make sure your installer understands both AC coupled and DC coupled configurations. The Sonnen Battery 10 comes in both versions. AC coupled works with any existing solar system. The hybrid DC coupled model integrates the inverter into the battery unit, which saves space and simplifies wiring for new installations. There are real limitations you should know about before committing. First, the Sonnen battery's round-trip efficiency of 86% means you lose about 14 cents of every dollar's worth of electricity you store. Over a 10-year lifespan with daily cycling, that efficiency gap adds up to hundreds of dollars in lost energy compared to a higher efficiency competitor. Second, the virtual power plant programs are not available everywhere. Sonnen Connect currently operates in California, Texas, Puerto Rico, and parts of New England. If you live outside those service areas, you still get a solid home battery, but you lose the earning potential that makes the financial case strongest. Third, the Sonnen community model, as it works in Germany, where neighbors share electricity directly, does not legally exist in most American states. What you get in the US is a VPP program managed by Sonnen and dispatched through a participating utility. That's valuable, but it's not the same as the peer-to-peer energy sharing that makes the German system so compelling. You're still dealing with a utility as a middleman. Here's where this lands. The average American household will spend roughly $23,000 on electricity over the next 12 years. A Sonnen battery with solar panels and VPP enrollment could cut that bill by 50 to 85%. The exact savings depend on your state, your roof, and your utility's willingness to cooperate. In Harriman, Utah, 600 apartment units are already proving it works. In Prescott Valley, Arizona, 2,900 homes are being built around it. In Germany, a village of 2,600 people generates 5 times its own electricity and earns millions selling the rest. The technology exists. The engineering is proven. The only thing standing between you and a neighborhood that powers itself is a set of rules written for a world that no longer exists. So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. If your utility offered you a deal where you share your battery's excess with your neighbors in exchange for a lower rate, would you take it? Or would you rather keep full control of your stored energy and pay the higher bill? There's no wrong answer, but your answer says a lot about whether this model can work in America. And if you think 10,000 cycles on a lithium iron phosphate battery sounds like a number someone made up, check the data. Sandia National Laboratories published cycling results from their long-duration storage testing program. The numbers hold. Subscribing and sharing is the simplest way to make sure information like this keeps showing up in your feed. Otherwise, it disappears behind an algorithm that would rather sell you something you already own. And if you want to see what happens when a country bans gas connections to new homes and mandates battery storage in every build, that video is coming next.